Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 6, and today's verse is number 3. So, I don't know how we'll do it. There's nothing on the board, so does everybody have access to Bhagavatam or cycle?
It is a book over there. There is a book. Next to book.
So we may be able to cite. Sukham Aindriyakam Dayita Dehayogena Dehinam Savatara Labhyate Deva Yata Dukam Ayatmata Sukham Aindriyakam Daitya Dehayogena Dehinam Sarvatra Labhyate Daiva Yata Dukam Ayatnata Sukham Aindriyakam Daitya Dehayogena Dehinam Sarvatra Labhyate Daiva Yata Dukam Ayatnata. Please chant.
Sukhamandriyakam daitya Dehayogena dehinam Sarvatra labhyate daiva Yatha dukkham ayatnataha Sukhamandriyakam daitya Dehayogena dehinam Sarvatra labhyate daiva Yatha dukkham ayatnataha Sukhamandriyakam daitya Dehayogena dehinam Sarvatra labhyate daiva Yatha dukkham ayatnataha.
Good morning. Hare Krishna. Good morning. Sukham happiness. Aindriyakam with reference to the material senses. Daitya, oh my dear friends. Born in demoniac families. Dehayogena because of possessing
because of possessing
a particular type of body,
a particular type of body,
Dehinam,
Dehinam,
of all embodied living entities,
of all the embodied living entities,
Sarvatra,
Sarvatra,
everywhere,
everywhere,
in any form of life.
in any form of life.
Labhyate,
Labhyate
is obtainable.
is obtainable.
Devat,
Deva
by a superior arrangement.
by a superior arrangement.
Yatha,
Yatha,
just as.
just as
Dukkam,
Dukkam,
unhappiness.
unhappiness.
Ayatnata,
Ayatnata,
without endeavor.
without endeavor.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Prahlad Maharaj continued, and we can repeat also the translation together. Prahlad Maharaj continued,
Maharaj continued.
my dear friends,
My dear friends,
born of demoniac families,
born of demoniac families,
the happiness perceived
the happiness perceived
with reference to the sense objects,
with reference to the sense objects,
by contact with the body,
by contact with the body,
can be obtained
can be obtained
in any form of life,
in any form of life,
according to one's past fruitive activities.
according to one's past fruitive activities.
Such happiness
Such happiness
is automatically obtained
is automatically obtained
without endeavor,
without endeavor,
just as we obtain distress.
just as we obtain distress.
Purport, please hear. In the material world, in any form of life, there is some so-called happiness and so-called distress. No one invites distress in order to suffer, but still it comes. Similarly, even if we do not endeavor to obtain the advantages of material happiness, we shall obtain them automatically. This happiness and distress are obtainable in any form of life, without endeavor. Thus, there is no need to waste time and energy fighting against distress and working very hard for happiness. Our only business in the human form of life should be to revive our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus become qualified to return home back to Godhead. Material happiness and distress come as soon as we accept immaterial body, regardless of what form. We cannot avoid such happiness and distress under any circumstances. The best use of human life, therefore, lies in reviving our relationship with the Supreme Lord, Vishnu. Sukham indriyakam daitya deva yogena dehinam sarvatra labhyate deva yata dukkam ayatnata. Prahlad Maharaj continued, my dear friends, born of demonic families, the happiness perceived with reference to the sense objects by contact with the body can be obtained in any form of life according to one's past fruitive activities. Such happiness is automatically obtained without endeavor, just as we obtain distress. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namo. So, Prahlad Maharaj is making the point here regarding to happiness and distress, that we are very eager to work hard for happiness, but we want to avoid distress by all costs. So Prahlad Maharaj is making the point that happiness which is obtained by the sense of, from the sense of it, by contact with the body, that happiness is automatically obtained without endeavor, just as we obtain distress. So normally, in conditioned life, we don't think like that. We don't think that happiness just comes automatically. We think rather it is the distress. It will come, and we try very hard to protect ourselves against distress and try to maximize our material happiness. So that is the focus of all endeavor. Everything is centered around this understanding that I have to work very hard to avoid distress and to increase my happiness, material happiness, as much as possible. This is the material platform of existence. This is material life, basically. The basic logic, the essential logic of material life. I have to work very hard for my material happiness and very hard to avoid material distress. This is the sum and substance of material consciousness. But Prahlad Maharaj is making the point that this distress, which you have so much fear, you have so much distaste for this material distress, and you're so afraid, you want to avoid it so very intensely. Like, it comes to you. Whatever you choose to do, however you choose to protect yourself against it, it will come, You cannot 100% protect yourself against distress. So Prahlad Maharaj is making the point that the happiness that you are so eager to get, that happiness, in the same way it will come, even if you don't endeavor very hard to get it. So that is actually a very profound philosophical point. That happiness which we are so eager to acquire, and then to guard it, protect it. Like Prahlad said, that happiness, it will come automatic to you. You don't need to go out of your way to get it. Actually, that's a waste of time. And I thought actually to maybe try to go into this logic a little bit more, or see what the acharyas they say that might actually strengthen our conviction in this regard. And of course, we know there's a very famous verse spoken by Rupa Goswami in his Sri Upadesamrita, and this should be text number 2 or 3. No, let's just. Yes. It's actually interesting because this verse is about sense and controlling one's urge for sense gratification. That's the basic topic which we are, engaged in here. And the funny thing the interesting thing to note about the Upadesamrita, the nectar of instruction, is that Rupa Goswami starts the first verse by stating that one who is able, a sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals, is qualified to make disciples all over the world. So basically, a person who is able to control his senses, then he is able to make, or qualified to make disciples all over the world. This is what is being said here in the first verse of Nectar of Instruction. And the next verse that Rupa Goswami speaks, so it's all is centered on we have to control our sense gratification. This is an important point. This we need to think about this. And then he goes on to say, Atyahara prayasas cha prajalpo nyamagaraha janasangas chalolam cha sadbir bhaktir vinashati. And that is, one's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities. 1. Eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required. 2. Over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. 3. Talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. 4. Practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement. Or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. 5. Associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness and 6, being greedy for mundane achievements. So this, to connect it with what Prahlad Maharaj is saying, or more specifically what how Prabhupada is putting it in the purport, because in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is saying that this happiness and distress is obtainable in any form of life without endeavor. Thus, there is no need to waste time and energy fighting against distress or working very hard for happiness. So I caught this particular line. There's no need to waste time and energy fighting against distress or working very hard for happiness. This working very hard for happiness, this we should note. Because Prabhupada, there's no need to work very hard for happiness. So this working very hard, this is actually when we lose our Krishna consciousness. When we become very much, you can say, entangled in that pursuit of this material happiness. That we must have our sense gratification. Our senses are screaming, and we are, we get to the point of working very hard for that sense gratification. And this is where we struggle. This is why, people are kept away from Krishna consciousness in the first place. They are very, very intensely engaged in working very hard for securing the sense gratification. And also, Rupa Goswami is saying that once devotional service is spoiled, so that means when we take up devotional service, if we work very hard for our material comforts, then that will be one of the 6 activities that will spoil our devotional service. So Prabhupada says that we should not work very hard for happiness. That means that we must work, because of course Krishna said without work you cannot maintain your soul connected with your body. You cannot keep the body and the soul together. So work must be there. But we should be careful that we don't work very hard simply for that, for the material comforts. Now, there should be sufficient time for chanting 16 rounds, chanting 6 quality rounds, attentive rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and there should be time to study the Shastra, at least 1 hour a day, and we should have time to be nice and friendly to the devotees. Not that, I don't have time. There should be time for loving exchange with devotees, nice sadhana, like that, chanting and reading. And that means that we're not working very hard. And we get up for Mangalati and we follow programs as, especially with Mangala, that's one of the essential important things in devotional service. So if we can do all these things comfortably, if we do these things, then we can have some idea that we're not wasting our time working very hard for material comforts. Because after all, we're taking time out of our schedule to do these things. And this will protect us. And again, maintaining devotional association. Because this is also one thing mentioned here, we can just touch upon it, that associating, that's the 5th one, is associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. Also, in the next verse, which is verse number 3, we'll have the opposite of that, the positive. And following in the footsteps of previous acharyas, and I believe it it's a very long purport, but in there you can say the importance of devotee association. If we maintain ourselves in devotee association, we'll be so much more, we'll have a chance of doing this, we'll have a chance of chanting 16 rounds, studying 1 hour a day, and getting up for Mangalati. As soon as we remove ourselves from devotee association, this will become very difficult, and we'll become overflooded with that need or urgency of just maintaining our material situation. So, so the adverse thing, you can say, opposed to this, as 5th, associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness, that we should associate with Krishna conscious persons who are very enthusiastic to make advancement in Krishna consciousness. So if we keep that association instead, then for sure it will have a beneficial effect. And we will make advancement automatically, practically automatically, if we just keep ourselves in that association. It's like riding the bicycle, you may say, with a very favorable wind in your back, while taking yourself out of that association. It's riding a bicycle against a storm. The mind becomes like a very strong wind, and you're riding your bike against the wind, like that. So, so this is one thing I caught actually, that one should not work very hard for happiness. Work needs to be there, for sure, but this very hard work, this will be harmful for Krishna consciousness, the advancement of Krishna consciousness. So it's also one interesting argument which Prahlad Maharaj he makes, which is worth taking note of, is that he says, "My dear friends born of demonic families, the happiness perceived with reference to the sense objects by contact with the body can be obtained in any form of life." So this is interesting. That the sense pleasure from sense objects, that can be obtained in any form of life. This is worth taking note of, because Prahlad is saying that why should you be like an animal? Why should you be satisfied with the animal platform of life? You can see the animals. They are also getting some happiness. They are also enjoying some sex life. They're also being able to get some food, and being satisfied with getting that food. They're also having some nice shelter. They're happy they don't have to stand in the rain. You see animals, they try in the same way to avoid the stress. You see a crow when it's raining. If it finds a little shelter, it will go there and will sit under the shelter. And it will sit safe from the rain, and it will be happy. At least now I don't have to be out in the rain. You see them, they're doing things like that. They're doing very simple things. They're not so sophisticated about how they avoid the stress and how they try to get happiness. But still, you see, they're engaged in that business. So Prahlad Maharaj is saying that why should you be satisfied simply with that animal platform? Because they're doing the same thing. Their life, they're dedicated to this. So why should you also, in the same way, dedicate yourself simply to that? You should be more ambitious in life. You should have some higher principle, because after all, animal's animal. And do you not have more faculties than an animal? Can't you think a bit more about the purpose of life? So he's challenging, in that sense, his friends. Any form of life you can have this. So he said that you should say there's a higher purpose. There is a better goal in life than simply these things. To endeavor very hard for material sense gratification. So this, of course, we have to bang into our heads, because one also important point is that the same sentence, "My dear friends born of demonic families." So it is being stated there that Prahlad Maharaj's friends, they were sons of demons. And what did they get from their fathers, demoniac fathers and mothers? They got the very same, like crow and, animal logic, that eat, drink and be merry. They were getting that by the example of their parents. They were engaged in that business. And they were even educated. They were sent to school, to learn this, like art of sense gratification, very nicely, sophisticated way. So in that sense, it's an important point that for ourselves, we were also, at least speaking for myself, I was born in a demonic family, and I received that education. I was highly not interested, but simply out of default, you just do it. And that's one thing about our situation, is that we have it in ourselves. Like myself, I have this tendency in myself, because I've seen it from the very beginning of life, the endeavor for sense gratification. I've seen it idolized and been taught, brainwashed, that this is actually what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be materially successful. You're supposed to be the most materially successful person in the world, because then you can enjoy the most, and that's the goal of life. So subtly, this is there. This philosophy has like very deep roots within the core of the heart, because that is Actually, why we leave the spiritual world altogether is that we want to independently get happiness, now by our own strength, by our own endeavor. Like try to imitate Krishna, basically. So this, of course, has been very deeply indoctrinated within our consciousness. And to get out of it, it's not easy, it's not just an overnight job. No, it's a